Hello and welcome to Transformations Cafe. We're serving light as bold as love. I'm your host, Ken Marks, and Transformations Cafe is brought to you by the Institute for Global Transformation. IFGT is a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization. Our vision is a world working together to utilize the power, love, and wisdom of higher consciousness to benefit humanity and the planet. Our mission is to support transformations in consciousness and in the way humanity interacts with one another so as to bring about positive change in the world, individually and collectively. We invite you to please visit our website, which was updated just a few months ago. The URL is all one word, theglobaltransformation.org, theglobaltransformation.org. And if you would like to join our community of change makers, there's a join button in the top menu on every page of the website. And if you want to support our work, including programs like Transformations Cafe, there's a donate button on every page, and that will take you straight to PayPal. This program is being recorded and will be published on IFGT's YouTube channel in the near future. We invite you to please subscribe to the channel, and when you do, there's a bell icon next to the subscribe button. And if you click that, you can choose the settings that will allow you to be notified when we post new content to the channel, such as this program, which will be up again in the near future. One of the things that we like about Transformations Cafe is that it's not just another interview program where the audience just is sitting passively. It's a conversation, and we invite our live audience to join us in the conversation. So for those of you who are here this evening to join this program live, would ask you to please use the chat feature in Zoom. Would really be really helpful if you don't use the digital hand raise or just wave at the camera, because I might not notice. But if you'll use the chat feature, if you want to come on and interact directly with the guests, just type the letter Q in the chat. That'll be my cue that you want to come on and talk and join the conversation live. If you prefer just to submit your question in writing, then please do so, and we'll get to as many of these as we can. So with that introduction, tonight is a very special program. It's a deep honor of mine to be able to host this program. We had intended to broadcast this live last month in correspondence with the actual month of IFGT's 20th anniversary. So unfortunately, circumstances dictated that we were not able to provide a live program last month, but nonetheless, we prevailed and we're able to do so today. And it is, again, my sincere and deep honor to be able to host this momentous program celebrating the 20th anniversary of IFGT. In doing so, we're joined by three people who I have lovingly been referring to as the founding mothers of IFGT, and they are the principal founder and still president of IFGT, Dr. Maryann Miller, Carolyn, or also known to us as CJ Mulkerrin, and Kristie Knutson. So you're seeing now on your screen some pictures that go back over the 20 years of IFGT. And maybe before we put our guests on camera, you can introduce yourselves while we're doing the show, and then we'll of course have you on and feature the live conversation. But I think it would only be appropriate to ask our founder and president, Maryann Miller, if you would start off just with a brief, say, 1 minute max introduction to who you are, yourself, how you all met, and the roles you've played. And we'll start again with you, Maryann, please.
Well, let me tell you, I surely couldn't do that in 1 minute. Basically,
you're the boss.
No, I'm just part of the team, remember.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm Maryann Miller, and I have a long background in metaphysics, over 50 years of study in different spirit traditions. They include many different classes and courses of study, one lasting 18 years, another almost 12. And I'm also a certified REID teacher and a new decision therapy counselor. And I also wrote a manual for that program. Let me see, I met CJ and Kristie, gracious. I met Kristie in the middle 1970s and CJ in 1996. So we've been long time friends. And they, along with my husband, Matthew Miller, were the impetus for actually getting IFGT founded. Okay, so the idea for the Institute for Global Transformation actually came to me as a cosmic download in a series of 3 dreams. And each night, part of the formation for the Institute was given to me. And after 3 consecutive night dreams, I had a complete picture of what this organization could be. It took many years before that actually became a reality. And actually, it was a meeting that I had, a luncheon actually with CJ Mulkerrin, that actually prompted me to make the last move that was necessary to get the Institute going. My husband, Matthew, and I had worked on it for years previous to that meeting, but it never really got off the ground for various reasons. But after meeting and having lunch with CJ, several things that she said prompted me to go ahead and contact some individuals that I had known for a long time, including Kristie. And we got together and actually had some meetings. And then in the early part of 2002, we decided to incorporate and start the nonprofit. So in September 10th of 2002, I actually incorporated the Institute in Atlanta, Georgia. And we had our board meetings, elected a board of directors, officers, and we were on our way. And then in 2005, we wanted to become a nonprofit. So I did quite a bit of work on that, so we didn't actually have to pay an attorney. And the thing that was impressive to me during that time, because it was after 9/11, the government was being very cautious with nonprofits. But we were able to put together a 1-inch notebook thick program to send to the IRS. And instead of waiting almost a year, which attorneys had told us it would take that long, we actually within less than a month received approval from the IRS to become a 501c3 nonprofit. So that work was put together by several of us, but we were all, I think I actually cried when we got the letter. It was so quick.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Well, why don't we go ahead and we'll also bring in our other 2 founding mothers. CJ, why don't you share with us a little bit about your background and maybe some highlights of your roles with IFGT.
Hi, everyone. Let's see, I met Maryann when we were in the Rosicrucian Order, I think probably back when I was living in San Jose. No, where was I living? Not San Jose, California, in the Bay Area at the time. And then subsequently, both Maryann and I happened to move to Georgia in the same year. And I think that's when we got to know each other a little bit more. And I was involved with the order in Georgia. And so that's how we got to know. And Maryann would talk to me at times about, she had this idea about this organization that had these various departments. And I think she had talked about it within, possibly doing it within the order, but it just wasn't going to go anywhere. And so that's when we started talking about, well, let's just do it on our own, or on your own, Maryann. So that's sort of how I got started. And yeah, so I have a background in studying with various mystery schools. I've been a student of metaphysics for a long time. And I also have a background in accounting and IT project management implementation. So when I left accounting, I went into project management for implementing accounting systems for large corporations. So I've been able to bring some of that background into the organization from a business standpoint. So that's been good through the years. And I've had various roles. I think at some point I was a secretary, as a treasurer. And now I'm a vice president. Thank you.
By the way.
It just was promoted to vice president, I guess, because of the work that we're doing in Uganda now. So that's been very exciting for me, because we're looking at starting an organization within Uganda, which we call Uganda Center for Transformations. We got contacted a few years ago by a gentleman who wanted to create an organization under the umbrella of the IFGT. He contacted Maryann, I think, over 2 years ago, well, before COVID. And Maryann asked me if I would, work with him to find out if it was, any viability to this idea. And so I started working with him in 2019, I think. And we worked for a little bit, and then all of a sudden he just went away and we never heard from him again. I think that was in 2020. So we just assumed that was it. Well, lo and behold, this past January, he reaches out and says, hey, things are getting better over here with COVID and everything. And so we're not so shut down, and I'd like to, explore this again. And so we did, and came up with a strategic plan for them, and it got approved by the board in July of this year. So we're working forward with these beautiful people in Uganda, 4 people there who are heading the charge over there to create this beautiful organization for us.
Yeah, it's a great story. And actually, it is a way to also demonstrate just how far IFGT is coming. As you were talking, I was thinking this is almost like one of those movies where you're going to flash forward and then we're going to step back in time and see how we got here. So certainly also want to say hi and welcome Kristie Knutson. If you just give us a little introduction to yourself and your relationship to IFGT.
Well, I just have to say, to start with, when you refer to us as the founding mothers, I think of the founding fathers as like Jefferson, Washington, which means the 3 of us are older than dirt. So yes, Maryann,
Well,
and I,
in this setting, we include past lives. So in this one,
yeah, exactly. Well, Maryann and I, as with CJ, were Rosicrucians in our earlier years. And I actually ended up as a public relations director, and then the president and CEO of the Rosicrucian Order, and my ritual title was Grand Master. And so that gave me, as with Maryann, we traveled a lot, we met a lot of people, and there was one of the things that we noticed was how the spiritual impetus was burgeoning, was growing. This seeking of people for some kind of spiritual connection was really taking off. So I remember when Maryann, it probably was around 2002, I think we were on the phone and she told me about these dreams. And I remember having goosebumps as she was telling me, I have them right now, as she was telling me about this. And in those first years, there was a lot of, I'm not going to call it thrashing, because there was a lot of, should we do this? Should we do that? Because it's the simple that Maryann got and the different departments, how do you execute that? What do you do? And so it took a while for this to start to really unfold. And I think Maryann brought this, I suspect this is why she got the dreams. Maryann brings, she brings an openness of spirit that at one point, I don't know if she consciously thought this, but she trusted others to find the shape of this organization, and providing all these opportunities for volunteers. The organization has been created by people who were given the chance to use their talents, to use their knowledge, and who had this tremendous desire to support the upliftment of humanity, the bringing of peace and sanity into the world. And it's miraculous what has happened in the last few years. And, you know, we were talking about, CJ was mentioning people coming from Uganda. And I asked CJ and Maryann, I think last week, well, where else do we have members? Well, it's the Netherlands, Venezuela, Chile, Uganda, Tibet, Australia, Rwanda, Barbados, Pakistan, India, Syria, New Zealand, Trinidad, Texas. Just Texas,
Another country.
France, Canada,
That was
and
my
Mexico. Yeah. And Canada. And I have a feeling that's just a few of the countries. So this was something that, without Maryann's unwavering commitment, she was given the instruction by the divine that this was to happen. And Maryann has worked for over 20 years, I would say 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, with not a single penny of pay. And she has been nurturing a support system for, as I said, all the people to realize, using their talent and their consciousness, to realize this wonderful organization. So you did good, Maryann.
Thanks, Kristie. Thank you all for kind of giving that bit of background and how you met, got started. There's a couple of things that you mentioned, Kristie, that I thought would be nice to unpack a little bit and maybe dive into. And both you and CJ mentioned that there was a common bond or association with the Rosicrucian Order. And I don't want to go into any detail about that here, but I wanted to mention it because one of the hallmarks of IFGT that with Maryann's leadership has remained very, very consistent is that IFGT has absolutely no affiliation, association with any belief system, with any particular teachings, with any teachers or lineages at all, but is open to all people that find themselves wanting to explore their spirituality, if they're familiar with the notion of being on the spiritual path. But one of the things that I think has lent itself to the reason that 20 years later it is still thriving and has a very welcoming and interested and interesting community of individuals, and now beginning to affiliate with other like organizations, is because if there's anything that kind of holds all of these different ways of coming to the same basic ideas and truths that are contained in all sorts of different traditions, religions, belief systems, etc., is this idea of many paths up the mountain. and that there are many paths, because so many of us in different cultures, as you mentioned, we have so many different nations that have been represented, as well as different periods of time. Things are very different now than they were 20 years ago, and things seem to be changing rapidly. And so I just wanted to point out that so there's no confusion. This is not an organization affiliated in any way with the Rosicrucian organizations, nor any other. We are get a lot of our energy and a lot of our community because we have successfully not said you have to believe in one thing or another, because in the end, when you begin to especially study various different traditions, they pretty much have a lot of common elements. And the point is that once you get to that mountaintop, it pretty much is all the same thing. And the paths are there for us to find the way that suits us individually. And that's also part of IFGT. So wanted to say that, Maryann. I don't know if you want to add to that or if I've covered it well enough, but I thought that was important to point out.
I think that is very important, Ken, that everyone knows we have dogma, no teachings. We have interesting articles, booklets on the website, but they're all offered for the individual to read. And if it seems true for them, that's fine. If it doesn't work for them, that's also fine. We have no dogma, nor will we ever.
I think the IFGT is really offers that opportunity. It's not just talking about stuff. It's about putting it to act on it, to really create shifts in consciousness and opportunities for personal growth. So I totally agree. This is something that can illuminate individuals' spiritual understanding or religious understanding.
And also kind of along those lines, and something I think that we certainly want to explore a little bit in this conversation is part of that initial download that came in the dreams, and what made this organization either at least very unusual, if not unique, those 20 plus years ago, was the part of that vision that talked about, or at least evolved into a department structure. I don't want to say a whole lot more about that without letting Maryann explain it, but there is an element of, from the get-go, a goal to transcend just the box of talking about spirituality or consciousness, and relating that more and bringing that into, some would say, our everyday life and affairs. Maryann, do you want to talk a little bit more about that part of the dreams and the goals to do that? Because to me, that's one of the most outstanding hallmarks of the organization.
Yes, I think that's one of the things that really sets us apart. And one of the things that has always been troubling, when we would try to obtain a grant, we were like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, because we wanted to uplift consciousness in all areas of life. And that was the purpose of having the different departments: business, the arts, the healing arts, and so on and so forth. We didn't want to only talk to the choir, so to speak. We wanted to reach out to these different areas of focus and see what we could do to be helpful in those areas as well. And we have had tremendous success in different volunteers in those different areas. Philip Horvath, for one, in the business department. Philip talks all over the world, lectures all over the world on how to transform business. And so that was really the idea behind the departments. At least was my understanding in the dreams, that was why it was important. We wanted to reach all areas of life, because in order to reach a tipping point, it's going to take all of us together.
And we'll return to that term you just used, tipping point, because that's also very central to IFGT and the work that it has done over these past 20 years. But with regard to the departments and trying to bring consciousness into everyday affairs and the things that we do for a living and our relationships, that now also seems to be just a growing acceptance of that. And there's a term that I've heard people using recently, and I've been using as well, wanting to normalize these things that used to be just the province of, the thing we always talk about is the woo-woo stuff, right? And or esoteric, or again, something that was separated from the rest of life. And the fact is that it's not, it's all integrated and connected. And more, there is a growing interest in this normalizing of these things, so that will actually advance us toward this tipping point, which we'll get to in a moment or two. But I think it speaks again to how visionary you were, Maryann, and how it really helped to kind of propel this part of humanity's evolution. So it's part of the joy of getting to know you, working with this team. So without my blathering on further, Zoe, please unmute yourself, and you have a question.
Yeah, and I'm hoping I can articulate this properly. I honor the work that we have all done to try to develop ourselves and be more conscious and more useful to our humanity. And there is this uplifting of enlightenment that is coming and is necessary. And I'm just kind of wondering, besides being all lovely and wonderful and thinking about being spiritual and business and sports and music and art, where are we standing with regard to this moving forward with this major shift that's happening, and how not only can we be of service to move forward with our community and with the world, as some big serious healing has to happen. We're up against a big thing right now.
Well, I think that's a very important question, Zoe. And as you say, there are many important things happening right now, many important major cycles that have been dovetailing at this point in time. And so it's really a doorway from the old into the new. And in order to go into that doorway and reach the new, we have to discover what needs to be corrected, what needs to be changed and transmuted. So I think we're living in a time right now where we are seeing the mud at the bottom being stirred. But unless we recognize that there is mud at the bottom, we're unable to correct it. So as the Hopi Indians said, we are the ones we have been waiting for. So we are the ones that can help restore balance and move into that next cycle. So it's not just the Institute for Global Transformation doing this, it's thousands of organizations all over the world who are working toward this same goal. And it's going to take all of us together to help move us into that next cycle. But fortunately, with the internet, I think we probably each receive maybe half a dozen emails a day of webinars that we can attend, information that we can access now, meditations and many other things that we can do to help sort of clear the mud at the bottom. And I do truly believe we're on the verge of an age of awakening. And together, we're going to move us into that new age. But it's going to be difficult. It is difficult. And for those who are more sensitive than others, it's even more difficult. And for the children, it's exceptionally difficult. But there are, like I said, thousands, probably millions of organizations all over the world that are all working toward this same purpose. And I have no doubt at all that success is going to be achieved. And we are, as a humanity, going to move into an age of awakenedness where things that seemed impossible to correct will be corrected, and it will be a much better world. But those of us who are working to help this, it's a huge effort that we must put forth, but it's one that I think we're all ready for, because we're not here living in this time and space for no reason.
Maryann, you want to also describe kind of the tipping point, how that relates to our work, and also I think it addresses Zoe's question.
Well, the tipping point is something the IFGT recognized that we were supporting a few years back. And so when we became conscious of actually helping not only to support, but broadening programs that could bring more information to the masses, we realized that together we are all working toward creating that tipping point. And the tipping point is, as I think Ken likes to say, would look something like, to use an example, we once thought the earth was flat, but now we all recognize it's not. Well, as part of working toward the tipping point, if you think back even 15 years ago, some of the things that are so natural today, even insurance companies covering acupuncture, meditation in the business community, those things didn't exist 20 years ago. So we can look at many things that have changed in the last 15, 20 years that point to the fact that these things are becoming more everyday. And as more and more of these, what we would normally call spiritual topics, become everyday topics, we can actually see us move toward that tipping point.
The tipping point where at some point it becomes just generally accepted that things are different than we once thought they were. And in the example that Maryann used, at some point in human history, enough people acknowledged and came to understand the earth was round and not flat. And after that, it just was accepted. And so you can extrapolate that idea to many of the things that have seemed unusual. And Maryann gave some examples that are more direct right now in terms of alternative medicine and what now might be called relaxation practices that were used to be the province of very fringe groups and individuals, and now are being accepted more and more. And one of the telltales of reaching or passing a tipping point is that the conversations that used to be very prevalent just kind of fade away because there's nothing to discuss anymore. It just is how life is. And so I think we are moving to that point, and it's a compelling question that Zoe asked, but there's tons of evidence that things are also shifting. And one of those things also, and I wonder if anyone on our panel can speak to this a little bit more, is something that I know is a personal interest of Maryann's and mine and many other people, but it has also been something that has been a pillar focus for IFGT from the beginning, and that is the role of science and the relationship of science and consciousness or spirituality. So anyone want to talk about that in particular, because that is another key component of this organization?
You know, I do want to say, as we're talking about the tipping point, it used to be in the last century, from the early 1900s until the early 2000s, that the spiritual focus was at an individual level. It was about uplifting our personal consciousness. And there were a lot of people who were very, very spiritually focused, who thought they were the only ones. They didn't know that there were others like them. And what is coming about now is the realization in humanity that there are many folks who hold this sacred intention. And I think this is why it is so important. The tipping point is people to people, but it's also organization to organization, and being shared light workers. And I know that you and Maryann and you, Ken, have been working on that. So I think this is the genius of this organization, that it is taking people from that individual spirituality into a shared consciousness. And that as the sharing expands, that contributes to this tipping point where suddenly that's the way it is. And the tipping point becomes such a powerful energetic structure that it pulls people up toward it. Rather than oppressing anybody, it pulls them up. And I know that in some medical systems, there is a healing crisis before the healing. So you can start on the therapeutic level, and then the patient will experience a healing crisis before the healing begins. And I think that's part of what we're seeing, as Maryann was talking about this, as we step through the doorway. I think we are experiencing this healing crisis, which is why there's so much division, and that we have to stay focused on our purpose and allow us to draw people up to a higher shared consciousness.
Thanks, Kristie. And I want to point out a couple of things, and I do see that one of our audience members has a question too. We'll get to you in a second, Chris. But one of the other hallmarks of IFGT is that it truly has been developed as a community. And many traditions talk about the importance of finding others on the path, so to speak, because of that sense of isolation that Kristie mentioned. And one of the things that IFGT has done with very deliberate intention is to try to be as open and welcoming a community so that people discover they're not alone, and that they have the opportunities to learn and share and explore together. And so currently one of the best examples of that is the program that one of our board members, Henry Shelton, helped to conceive and bring into being. And now CJ is managing it wonderfully. And so CJ, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Happy Hour and how that is related to the community, the spirit of IFGT, and the tipping point, maybe.
Sure, Ken. So Henry started the spiritual happy hour, and I think it's been going on now for over 2 years. So it had some legs and longevity to it, which shows you that it's a great idea that he had. So his idea, I think, originally was to bring people together to talk about various topics in spirituality, because there may not be places where people can just go just to have a conversation about the types of topics that we discuss in it. And we talk about everything and anything depending on who our speakers. So Henry is still leading some of these spiritual happy hour sessions. I lead them, and Kristie's also leading them. And so it runs the gamut. We may talk about quantum physics in one of them. We may talk about UFOs in another. We may talk about how to bring a tipping point about. We may talk about, Henry brought up, was it the currency of amor? I can't remember exactly, but the currency of love is being a future currency in the world, which was really beautiful, and discuss that. I mean, it's just runs the gamut, and it's people come and go. I mean, as they please. I mean, there's no membership. I mean, if you're a member of the IFGT, you can attend, but there's no membership into the spiritual happy hour. You can just come if you're interested and join us and just have a great discussion about whatever the topic is for that evening. And sometimes, we don't have a particular topic. We let the group decide what they want to talk about. So it's really free flowing in how it's run, but it's been a very successful program that we've done. And I think it's just given people a voice to talk about their view of their spirituality and what they believe. And so in a space that doesn't judge, it's a free space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Thanks, CJ. All right, we have a couple of questions. Chris Chavez, who will ask to speak in a moment, but also thank you, Chris, for coming. And Chris was a past guest on this program. And so if you're interested in that interview with Chris, please go to our YouTube channel. But anyway, welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Ken, and it's nice to see everyone. Yeah, Ken, you made a comment regarding the term science, and was wondering if there is a distinction that's made between respect for science and then scientism. It seems like, at least to me, that scientism sort of tries to eclipse spirituality and that part of human experience. Whereas there can be a situation where, science and spirituality can coexist. Are those issues addressed in IFGT?
Theoretical quantum physicists, there are many. Amit Goswami, for one, and even though he is no longer with us, David Bohm, and many others that I could name, have really promoted the inclusion of spirituality with science. And the experiments that have been going on and continue to go on are really proving many of the things of the ancient wisdom that we've heard about for so many years. And on the IFGT's website, we have several articles and even some videos, one with Amit Goswami, that address the inclusion of quantum physics and spirituality. So it's beginning to come together again. There's, I wish I could think of his name right now, another theoretical quantum physicist that has a wonderful website. If I can think of it, I'll put it in the chat for everyone.
Thank you, Maryann. Yeah, I shut up with this. I think it's really important for Aquarian age spirituality to be a partner with science, because there are lots of breakthroughs and paradigm shifts occurring, beneficial ones that are occurring in that domain. And so thank you, Maryann.
One of our affiliate organizations is the Scientific and Medical Network, which is based in Europe, but they have a very impressive membership, lots of very well-respected, highly credentialed people in various fields of science. And you mentioned scientism, and that is an area that there are still people in the science community that do not see the interrelationship with science and consciousness, but that is absolutely changing. And there is just some wonderfully compelling information from the work of people like Raymond Moody and Paul Perry that are demonstrating that there's empirical evidence of more to our existence in an energetic sense than just this human life. So, but thanks for that. And I don't want to run out of time. And one of our esteemed board members and contributors, Diane Collins, is with us tonight. She has a question. So hi, Diane, it's been a long time. Good to see you. And
Hi, it has. Hello, everybody. Great to be with you, enjoying the conversation. My question for all the panel is, in your experience of being here from the beginning, or what would you say would be the key transformational impact or experience that you have noticed from the work of IFGT on its members or in the world, or like just something that stands out for you of the effect of IFGT?
First, I wanted to tell everyone when I was talking about our theoretical quantum physicists, when Diane asked her question, I want to tell all of you about Diane's book, Do You Quantum Think? New Thinking That Will Rock Your World, which goes into some of the science of quantum physics and spirituality. And Diane's programs are on the website. So that's another way we try to bring in the scientific side as well. So getting back to your question, Diane, I think those that I know in my personal life have found great peace of mind when challenges arise. They have better tools with which to deal with those challenges. I think our community that we call change makers is a huge part of what they really appreciate about IFGT, the spiritual happy hour that CJ was just talking about. And on that particular program, we've had people share what being part of the community has meant to them. So I wouldn't want to pick out anyone in particular, but I think all in all, we, along with many other organizations, have really helped to make a difference in people's lives. And I've never seen working toward raising consciousness as a competitive thing. Mm-hmm. It takes all of us together as a community to help make this happen. So I never single us out individually as doing more so than anyone else, because it's really all of us that together that's going to make a big difference.
You know, I want to offer a very simple thing in terms of what their experience of the IFGT is. The IFGT started a distant healing council and an opportunity for people to ask to be put on a healing list. And that would be sent out to everybody who volunteered to be on the council across the globe. And I had the privilege of facilitating that for a while. And then I turned it over to Zoe, and Zoe turned it over to Peggy, who is now the one handling this. And I know we have put thousands of people on that list, thousands of people. And the results, when people would report what happened, there were sometimes really remarkable things that happened. And I think at the core, I mean, I put myself on the list. I put my brother or sister on the list. And I personally feel such a sense of comfort that I'm being held in the arms of people around the globe, that we are together, we're not alone. And that's just a small example of what I think we do.
That's that's actually the first thing I did when I joined the IFGT years ago, was go on that council. So yeah, that's perfect or, non-local mind, the effect of it. CJ, what about you?
So one of the things I've noticed about the IFGT, and Matthew used to talk about this, that there is a note that the IFGT puts out into the world and that people find us based on that note. And I think that's true, because it's been amazing how we don't do a lot of advertising, but people will find us and join us. And then through the 20 years, I've seen a lot of people come and go, because we're an all volunteer organization. So we've had a lot of people come through, volunteer for a while, and then move on to other things. But the thing I've noticed about these people is they come in, and it seems like when they leave, there's been a shift in consciousness. They seem to always leave in a better place. I'll just put it like that. And I think a lot of that's due to that Maryann and her allowing people to find themselves and being who they are.
One of the other very refreshing things about IFGT and its culture is that, and it probably goes back to the fact that it isn't dogmatic in any way, but there is a fun kind of joking spirit that and a sense that you really can let any guard down and share whatever you want. I have friendships with people in here that I talk about things that I just would not have thought that I could really share with more than a couple of very close people before. And so it is this welcoming community, but it also is one that you can be as funny and goofy as you want to. And when we were talking about this conversation in preparation last month, our founding mother shared a story about the earlier days, and the group used to get together. And as you may have seen in some of the slides when we were doing the introductions, this is not hardcore devout people. There are adult beverages in those pictures, and so these are real folks who are just discovering their spiritual aspects and their souls, if you will. And anyway, does anyone want to maybe wrap this up? You don't have to tell the whole story if you don't, but there was a very interesting board game that used to be a feature.
Yes, I was just going to say that. So when we had meetings together, it might be at Maryann's house, or somebody would come to somebody else, and we'd be staying overnight, for these things. We spent a lot of time eating a lot. We spent time, two things. One was the card game Hand and Foot, and everybody cheated. No, I don't know if we did. And then the other is the game of enlightenment. I actually went online and I bought it on eBay, and it's actually a box that's not even out of its wrapping. So the next time we have a get together, we spend a lot of time laughing. We really do. And being silly, except Maryann. Maryann's never silly.
I thought you were going to talk about the game Enlightenment that we played at several
yes, that
annual
was
board
game.
meetings.
Yeah,
and oh my gosh,
you have to tell that one.
We were falling on the floor laughing so hard at some of it's a game where you have to do whatever the card says to do when you draw that particular card. And yes, we have a wonderful time. There's no meeting that is dry and boring, shall I say.
There, I think, is a recognition that we're fully human, but also discovering these other aspects of ourselves. And one of the joys of life really is laughter, right? And to maybe to Zoe's point earlier, it's nice to remember that, and nice to find reasons to laugh, and that laughter and gratitude kind of shake hands a lot. And so I think that's also in keeping with the spirit of this organization, that the path and finding your way on it is sometimes very trying, and finding a loving, warm, supportive community that can feel like family, that also helps you get a belly laugh once in a while, that's all good. So
what I wanted to say, because you say a lot, Maryann, about and I know that's true. There are so many, as you say, probably millions of organizations doing the work of bringing forth this new era of enlightenment, awakening, Aquarian age, great shift, however we wish to speak of it, all of the above. But I do want to say something about the IFGT. Every organization has its own distinctiveness. And I think one of the distinctions of the IFGT, which is, it's like a boutique organization, right? It's not in terms of membership and like that. And I'm sure there have been thousands and tens of thousands of people who have enjoyed the valuable content on the website. However, what I feel the distinctiveness is that, and I've, over the 7 years or so that I have been on the board, that as CJ, as you're saying, as people come and go on the team, the all volunteerness of it, that the intent level for elevating consciousness is so strong and so laser focused and powerful at the same time, as you say, Ken, everybody having a good time, that it's like, I love what you said about Matthew saying, there's a note, like, right, that resonant note that goes out, that there's a great power in a very relatively small group of people. And I feel that that is a key distinctiveness of the organization as an organization. It's that very, high level focus on what we're really all about. And that even the idea that we have, the distance healing council is an aspect of it, all of it, this spiritual happy hour, the meditations that we're to do, that the power of our collective intent is extremely powerful. And as I like to say, it takes only one to tango in a quantum world, where one person's intent has the power to shift the entire field, relational field. And so I look at this organization that way, that Sandra, I think, once said, well, maybe we don't have to grow to be, 1 million members. Maybe we will, who knows? But that because of that power of intent, that there is such an awakening going on with everyone who comes into contact with the IFGT.
I think one of the main aims of the IFGT is to assist individuals in raising their individual consciousness. And as that happens, they have a note that they carry with them that affects everyone around them. And as each of us do that, we actually are helping to create a better world for everyone. Mm-hmm. And so part of the IFGT's purpose is to offer different ways that individuals can raise their consciousness. And there's an old spiritual axiom that says, know thyself. This is the most important thing you can do to help create a better world. So together, I think that's what the IFGT is doing. And it's just been a dream, a pleasure. I don't even have words for what it has meant to me to be part of this community for 20 years. The people that I've gotten to know, the work we've been able to do, the it's just been wonderful for me individually. And I think it's been wonderful for all of our volunteers, our wonderful, wonderful volunteers. And without them, we wouldn't even exist. And to have volunteers with us from actually 20 years ago, clear up to last week, we brought on new volunteers. It's just been a pleasure and a lifelong dream.
Thanks, Maryann. It's a beautiful explanation of what IFGT is and what it brings to the world.
Like to see us go another 20 plus years, you know, and to thank everybody who has been with us along the way for helping us create this momentum that's gotten us here. So thank you.
Yeah, well, can't echo that loudly enough. I'm still a relative newcomer, been given scads of opportunity to help out and also to grow. Maryann has said she doesn't even recognize me compared to the person she met. And that is largely credit to this organization and her dear friendship and those of the rest of you that I've met and had a chance to work with. It's been absolutely transformational for me in incredibly powerful and very deeply touching ways in some of the most trying times of my life. And so I think that's the genuineness, the authenticity of the organization are their hallmarks. So just here, this is as good as I can do a water bottle, but here's to the 20 years and to all the work and making the dream come true. So here's to IFGT, here's to Maryann and Matthew and all of you who helped get us to today. Thank you so much.